Welcome to the Pump Fake, day after Week 17 Sunday around the NFL. Jarrett Bailey, joined by Matt Verderame of Fansided. Happy New Year, by the way. You said you're watching Beverly Hills Cop on New Year. How was that?
It was good. It was fun. I love that movie. So I enjoyed watching that more than the New Year's Eve programming, which is just awful.
Awful.
I watched the Ohio State Georgia game. I watched the second half of the Michigan game. And then, I sat down and I was like, I'm not watching Ryan Seacrest ever. So I'm going to watch something that's actually worth my time. And I sat down and watched Beverly Hills Cop. It's a great movie. I hadn't seen it in a while.
Have you watched Glass Onion yet?
No.
I highly recommend. It's fantastic. I don't know if you've seen like the first of that little new a little cinematic, I don't want to call it universe, but the first Knives Out movie is very good. This is like a continuation of that. Has nothing to do with the first movie, but it's very good. And Daniel Craig's brilliant in it. So highly recommend. It's on Netflix.
I'll have to watch it.
If you're into murder mystery stuff, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I normally don't watch like most any television unless it's sports or it's like a rerun of a sitcom I enjoy just to laugh. Like it's the only reason I'll sit there and watch TV is to laugh if I'm just stressed out. But I've actually watched a lot of like documentaries and stuff lately. This isn't a documentary, but I watched All's Quiet on the Western Front, which is a Netflix movie about World War One, which obviously was not a comedy. But I just I don't know. I'm into the history of war and whatnot. So I sat down and watched that. That was very well done. It took a little. It's a very slow movie, but it was very good. I'm trying now that we're getting toward the end of the season. I have a little more time because I don't have to sit there and care about 32 teams. I don't have to care about 14 and then 7 or 14 and then what 8 and then 4 and 2 and 1.
Yeah. Do you have any resolutions? Are you somebody who makes resolutions?
No, I don't. Because I break them in an hour. No, I'm not going to waste my time disappointing myself. I really just kind of feel like if you just, I don't know. I mean, like I understand why people do it. Like my mother's a huge, like I'm sure she has like 87 New Year's resolutions, none of which she'll keep by February. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you live the way you want to on a day in, day out basis, you don't have to have a bunch of resolutions. Like, I mean, I'd love to sit here and be like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds this year. Like if 10 pounds is like the biggest problem I have, I'm not that worried about it. I'm just not. I can't get worked up enough about it to be. This is it. This is my life. Like that's my biggest problem in my life.
Yeah. You've known me for a while now. I think I don't make resolutions either, but I think if I were to make one, it would be less cynical. I think I just am a cynical person at heart.
I feel like not just you, but in general, like that's just kind of like who you are, right? Like I mean, at some point, like you just but I mean, like me, like I'm impatient. I'm not going to become more patient. I'm 34 years old. I'm done. Like my patience is gone. I have 2 kids now.
Yeah.
Like any hope of patience is gone. So like I'm not patient. I'm not. I'm terrible at that. Like and we can talk about the NFL, but I collect baseball cards, like vintage baseball cards, not all this shit now where there's like 100 different subsets of what I like. When I was a kid, my whole thing was like, I'm going to get like one card of every great player from like the 50s on. And I thought it was completely unattainable. And as time has gone on, I've mostly been able to do it. And then, thankfully through my job and whatnot, I've been able to collect a little more and more. And so the point being, what diesel engine just drive by your house?
Yeah, I live by like a main road, and every once in a while you'll hear, if I'm doing a show, you'll hear something that annoying.
These things happen. But point of the story is I've started to put together like complete sets from like the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And I started doing it as a hobby. I'm like, I'll just chip away at it over time. I'm not patient enough to do it over time. Like I have an obsession with putting the entire set together as fast as humanly possible. So like I will just, it doesn't matter. Like the cost goes out the window. I just have to do it. I have to be done with it. I'm a completionist. I'm never going to be patient about that. I'm already figuring out ways like how I can afford certain things. And if my wife ever finds out I'm buying, I'm probably divorced. But that's fine. I'm willing to take that risk.
Well, I'll touch on one thing that I do before we get into this. It's two things actually. One that's pretty well along, one that I'm starting. I'm like, you see the stuff behind me. I'm a big Batman dork, so like I'm trying to get a Funko Pop of every Batman character there ever was. So far, it's going well. I've ordered 3 more this week, and it's a cheap hobby, so that's nice. I started a mini helmet collection, but they all have to be throwback helmets. I want to get one of every team. Some of them are going to be a lot more difficult than others. But I just purchased a 60s Oilers one yesterday. So that's like the start of this. So that'll be my little next project that we'll see where it takes me. In terms of this past week, we'll start last night, Sunday Night Football, Steelers, Ravens. I don't know, man. Like a month and a half ago, the Steelers are 3-7. They're going to have a top 10 pick. And I came to terms with like, all right, new direction of the team, see what they can get.
Right.
And then they play a bunch of bad teams and they beat them. And the past couple weeks, the offense has looked dead for 56 minutes. And then Kenny Pickett plays well down the stretch. No one has been harder on Kenny Pickett than I this year. He made his 3 best throws as a Steeler last night. The one to Freiermuth, the one to Steven Sims, and then the dart on the run to Najee Harris to score. I don't know if he's the guy, but the last 2 weeks have done a lot for his case and done a lot for Mike Tomlin's case too, because somehow, some way, here we are going into week 18, and the Steelers, after starting 3-7, are in the thick of it, in large part because of him.
I mean, I wrote about Mike Tomlin late last night. I felt compelled to after the game. It wasn't going to make my column because my column was essentially filed and finished, but I was like, I'm going to add this thing about Tomlin because he's just been unbelievable. Mike Tomlin is the most underappreciated coach in football. I can't. How many Steelers fans I've seen over the years are like, they should fire him. They haven't won, but it's like, bro, if they fired Mike Tomlin, they should fold that franchise. I mean that genuinely. Like they should fold the Pittsburgh Steelers if they fire Mike Tomlin. That man is the only reason the Steelers have been relevant for the last 3 or 4 seasons. He's it. Because from a national perspective, looking at them, I mean, they have a handful of guys, but that team is not. You're not looking at the Steelers and go, wow, they're just loaded with talent. I mean, Fryman's fine. Pickens is a good young rookie. I like him a lot. That offensive line is not good. Like they don't have any offensive weapon who you consider like an elite player. I mean, Pickens may become one, but he's not an elite player yet. Like they don't have one Pro Bowler on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they don't have anybody on the offensive side who you look at and say, yeah, that guy's a great player. Harris played like one last night. He was incredible.
111 yards and 22 carries last night.
He was great. I thought it was the best game I've ever seen him play. And then, of course, defensively, they have Watt and Hayward and Fitzpatrick. I get it. But, I mean, that Steelers team, if you have them coached by an average coach, that team's winning like 6 games. I mean, they just are. And, Kenny Pickett's a weird guy because early on, he was throwing picks like they were going out of style. Now he's not.
That Sunday night game against Miami, too, on a national stage, he throws 3 of them, and none of them were pretty.
No, and he threw a bunch against the Jets. And I know the one was a Hail Mary. Like, I get it. But, I mean, he's been really improved over the last, I don't know, month at not turning the ball over. And, my thing was like, all right, that's cool. He's not turning the ball over. That's a big step. Like that is. But now, like, I want to see you actually make some plays that matter. And as you've said, and you're right, like for 56 minutes, I mean, he didn't do anything. I mean, they could move the ball for a foot other than Harris running it. And then all of a sudden on that last drive, they got down there and scored. It was funny watching the game. I always kind of wait till teams get in the red zone on those drives with the quarterback like Pickett because it's like, all right, it's easy to move the ball between the 20s on a drive like that because the other team knows you got to score a touchdown. They're going to trade time, whatever. What happens when the field's condensed and you've got to gun the ball in there? And I give it to Pickett, man. On that play for that touchdown, I thought he was going to get sacked immediately. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be 4th and goal from the 17 or whatever the hell it was. I got to hand to him. I thought eluding the sack was as impressive as the throw. I mean, I thought he was going to get killed. And then it was one of those balls and he threw it for whatever the reason. I was like, oh my God, he's going to throw a pick. Like he just the weight of the ball hit him right in the hands. It was a great throw. I don't know if he's the guy or not. Like, I'm a little over the proclamations this morning of like, oh, he's that guy. Like, all right,
so over that.
like
Yes.
breathe. Okay. Jared Stidham just looked like Tom Brady. He is not Tom Brady. But to Pickett's undying credit, like that was a legitimate moment in the kid's career. Like that, if he ends up being good or very good, like that's something you'll go back to and go, that was when he kind of became, or showed glimmers of who he could
His
become.
coming out party.
But I think it's also like, now go beat the crap out of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna be the future and everything else, not that if he doesn't beat Cleveland, they're gonna move on or anything, but like if you're going to build off that, don't dissipate. Go out and throw for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. Cleveland's defense stinks. They're playing for nothing. Go out and dominate the game, win the game. I know this is nuts. I think if they win this game, they're going to go to the playoffs because I don't think the Dolphins are winning with Skylar Thompson, and I don't think the Pats are going to Buffalo, rather, and winning that game, which is incredible. If the Steelers make the playoffs, they should have a parade for that team. So
if the Steelers make the playoffs, they should give Tomlin Coach of the Year.
I'm not against it at all. Like they should put him in the Hall of Fame before the wild card game. It's unbelievable. Dude, I'm not going to sit here and say they're terrible because like they have some guy, but like, they're not. No, they're not a team.
You put it well when you said that if they were coached by an average coach, they'd be a 6-win team. I think that that's a fair statement to make.
Yeah. I mean, if they were coached by, I don't know, Marvin Lewis, Norv Turner, like they're going like 6-11.
Sure.
Star.
Yeah, and there has to be. And look, I'm a fan of this team and whatnot, so I was already very over the entire proclamations that you touched on about 10 minutes after the game. There's got to be a happy medium where I immediately after said, you know what, tip of the cap to Pickett. That was a hell of a drive, hell of a throw, great job. For my grades for Sports Illustrated, they'll be out right now. I gave him an A. He played like solely for that drive. You look at his stats, they weren't great. You got 15 to 27 for I think like $167. Granted, they ran the ball for almost 200 yards, so they didn't necessarily need him to make a ton of plays with his arm. Right. And they're not asking him to do too much. But when they did, he delivered. I don't know, man. If you get a real offensive coordinator in there next year, like if you get Frank Reich in there, I would be very interested to see what he can do with Pickett because we've seen, what he did with Wentz, which, by the way, looking back on that now, Frank Reich should get a Nobel Prize for that job. If they can get a legitimate offensive coordinator, I'd be very excited to see what they can do with Pickett.
Yeah. I mean, look, Matt Canada is not the answer. I don't have this like visceral hatred of them that some people do. I just think they're very limited. But I mean, see that's always the question of this too. Like, you and I argued for 2 years about Roethlisberger. About like
it was closer to a year.
Like you got to open up the offense. I'm like they cannot do that. He can't throw the ball 10 yards. Like he has no arm. Now Pickett can throw the ball 10 yards. But like my question with Pickett is like, can you play the way the Bengals play with him?
That's the thing.
Can you play the way the Bills and the Chiefs play with him? Where it's like, look, Kenny, you're throwing 40 times, bro. Good luck. I mean, what does that look like? That probably looks like a murder scene. Like, I don't know that you can do that. Now, maybe he grows into that, but right now he cannot do that. That's why
we've seen it on a couple instances where they've had to have him do that, and it's not necessarily on him that he had to do that. The games against Buffalo where they lost by 1 billion points.
Like how those games turn out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's why, like, I understand the people who scream about Matt Canada, but I'm also like, look, how else do you want to play? It's the same conversation I have with Ravens fans about Greg Roman. And these people who are like, they just fire Greg Roman and they got to open up the pass game. It's like, they're not built to do that. They will get killed if they do that. Like, I think sometimes fans just have to have an honest conversation with themselves. Okay, everybody knows, despite covering the league and whatnot, okay, I grew up and remained a Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
The Chiefs yesterday in their first 40 plays against the Broncos, who were missing their top 6 defensive linemen from the beginning of the year. Top 6. The Chiefs in their first 40 plays ran 7 times. Just utterly refused to do it. We're leading most of that time. We're always within a score. They just absolutely were like, nope, not going to do it. Like, just refuse. And they don't care. Like that, and it drives me insane. I'm a child of the 90s. Like on some level, I'm like, my God, can you run the ball occasionally? But they will not do it. They get in the 3rd and 1, they won't run. They're the worst team in the world on 3rd and 1 because they won't run the ball. But my point is, as a just removing myself from covering the sport, as a fan of them, as much as it drives me crazy, like I just have to accept it. It's what they are, it's who they are, and maybe to some extent, you know what, it's a smart thing to do because of who you have playing quarterback. The Ravens are the example the other way. It's like they've got to get Lamar 35 to 40 attempts. It's like, no, they don't. That will not end well. And not because, like, there's always this, like, weird thing with him where it's like you've got to be unbelievably to one side of the coin or the other.
Yeah.
Like, you either have to think he can't throw a 5-yard pass, or you've got to think he's Joe Montana and Greg Roman is committing a felony by holding him back. It's like, no, the truth is he's a good thrower. He's not a great thrower. And if you ask him to throw the ball like Allen and Mahomes and Burrow and Herbert are asked to 40, 45 times a game, it's not going to end well. Some weeks will be fine. Some weeks will be tire fires. Like, that's the reality of it. And that's why the Ravens and Greg Roman play the way they play. There's a reason for it. And I think the Steelers, there's a reason they play the way they play. If they were like, hey, Kenny, we want you to throw it 40 times, hit that deep out, yeah, they lose by 30 points. They have a great defense. Like, play that way. That's how they should be playing.
Yeah, and you touched on the Chiefs too. I mean, this is for the last month or so, they haven't looked like the Chiefs that we're accustomed to, whether it was the Texans taking them to overtime, even the first game against Denver where they had a big lead to blow it, and then this game. Yeah, what seems to be the issue there? Obviously, they're winning these games, but it's not what we're accustomed to.
How much time do you have? What are their issues? Well, first of all, I mean, I will tell you right now, and I would bet my mortgage on this.
Okay.
If they lose in the playoffs, it's going to be because of one of two reasons. Their special
is one of them special teams? Okay.
Their special teams is I am almost to the point when they are ready to field the punt, they just should not put a returner back there. Just let the ball drop. I don't give a shit if it rolls 70 yards. I don't care anymore. They are guaranteed to fumble a punt return game. Doesn't matter who it is back there. Sky Moore, they finally stopped putting Sky Moore back there because he fumbles every time he tries to return a kick. I'm not even kidding. His fumble rate on punt returns has got to be like 30%. It's unbelievable. So they finally stopped that. Then they put Kadarius Toney back there. Kadarius Toney also can't stop fumbling the football. He fumbled and lost the fumble because he has this syndrome where he thinks he can beat 11 guys every single time he catches a punt. And he always beats like the first two, and then he just immediately fumbles on the third one. Ball's in the wrong hand, ball's carried like a loaf of bread, whatever. And then Harrison Butker, who's been one of the best kickers in football for years, cannot hit a field goal, cannot hit extra point, just cannot kick. And there's this big controversy with the Chiefs as to whether or not it's because of the holder or the kicker. I don't know who the hell's wrong, but whoever it is stinks because they can't figure it out, and they've been off all year long. And then their turnovers. I mean, they turn the ball over constantly. They have one of the worst ratios in the league. Mahomes yesterday threw one of the worst picks you'll ever see in your life. It hit Justin Simmons in the chest in the end zone.
One of the red zone, yeah.
Ball should have been 10 rows deep. It was 3rd and goal from the 10-yard line. He just threw it right at him. Mahomes really did not play well yesterday, but he threw for 3 touchdowns, and no one outside of who watched that game will actually realize that. But Mahomes is not their problem. Mahomes has been brilliant 99% of the year. Their problem is they turn the ball over too much, and their special teams is a tire fire. Like, whenever I picture them losing in a playoff game, it's Harrison Butker missing like 3 kicks. Because that or like they fumble 2 returns, they give up 14 cheap points. That's how they lose. That's how they lost to the Bills and the Bengals. Both, just constant miscues, like just stupid, ridiculous things. That Texans game, if you look at the box score of that game, the Chiefs annihilated Houston. They had like 500 yards, like $190 or something.
Yeah.
Turn the ball over. Just fumbled in their own red zone, missed a field goal, missed an extra point. Just like we did, and they had a second turnover. So I can't remember. No, it wasn't Mahomes throwing a pick. They fumbled again. Did multiple times. It was just a ridiculous football game. But they keep winning them. So Andy Reid gets up to the podium every week, and he's like, "It's fine. We played great." And it's not like yesterday. He literally walked up to the podium and was like, "Thought special teams was good." It's just like everybody in Kansas City's eyes rolled back so far. I think that they actually went through the back of their skulls. Like, how could you possibly think that? Like, there's no way you actually believe that. But he says it every week. And then nothing changes. So you're like, you must actually believe that somehow.
In terms of teams, if Kansas City does end up with the 2 seed, which I mean is very possible, what teams, as a Chiefs fan, would you not want them to face? Out of all the 3 that are likely going to get it, would be either New England, Miami, or Pittsburgh. I saw Peter Schrager this morning on GMFB saying, I don't want to play this Steelers team right now. And I was like, all right, Peter, slow down a little bit. I think anybody would be fine
Peter
playing.
was feeling the Steelers pretty good. I like Peter.
Peter was. I do. I like Peter a lot, but I thought that, yeah, he was definitely feeling Pittsburgh a lot this morning. In terms of those 3, if 2 is healthy, I think that the Dolphins are the easy one. You're like, yeah, I don't want.
Yeah.
I still think that they would win. I still think Kansas City would win, but in terms of those 3, you know, if you had the choice of, all right, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones, or Tua, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill, I know which one I want to see the least.
Okay, yeah. So if 2 is healthy, it's Miami by a mile because they're the best team. If he's not healthy and it's Skylar Thompson, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't care. I guess I would say Pittsburgh for one reason. Tomlin. Like, they could just have a game where they run the ball down your throat and they play good defensively, and you find yourself in a 17-14 game in the fourth quarter, and you get Baltimore last night where it's just one drive and they can put it together. I don't like Kenny Pickett. We might look back and go, yeah, he's a really good player. Like, Mac Jones is not good.
No.
Mac Jones is not beating Kansas City at Arrowhead. I'm sorry, he's just not. That's not happening. I don't think Kenny Pickett's doing it either. I don't think Tua's doing it.
No.
But if Tua is healthy, I would say the Dolphins are the scariest team. If he's not healthy, I got to be honest. I don't think any of those teams have any shot at going in there and beating them.
No, I don't either.
But Pittsburgh, because of their pass rush, because they can shorten the game, I would say they scare me more than the Steelers, or more than the Pats. And then if the Dolphins have Skylar Thompson, I'm sorry. I mean, that's not happening. That's like
the Chiefs might put up 60.
And that's the other thing. They have the defense, right? So, I mean, they would probably look worse than I did a minute ago when I sprayed myself in the face with my water bottle.
Nice.
Hey, you know what? Honestly, it was a little refreshing. It's a little hot.
I bet it was. No,
it was one of those things. It's one of those like pressure water bottles.
Oh yeah. Okay, like the goalies have in hockey.
Yeah. I felt like get through the helmet, and I like a dope. I took the Gatorade bottle out of my mouth about a quarter second too early. Luckily, it was mostly air, but took a little bit of an early shower.
In terms of like how that would go for Miami, like we saw how bad Pittsburgh did last year in the wild card round. Right. I think that Miami would be worse.
I don't think here's the problem for the Dolphins. They can't stop anybody.
No.
And if they the one thing I will say for the Chiefs, because since we're talking about them,
sure.
The Chiefs have done this in the past where in the regular season, if you go back and look at the year they went 14-2, went to the Super Bowl against Tampa, they did this relentlessly down the stretch. They'd get up, then they'd lose the whole lead. They'd hold on. They didn't cover one game for like a month and a half, like 2 months. It was ridiculous. And then every single one of the games led by like 20 points. And they would just blow the whole lead. They do stupid crap. And then they would kind of like amble their way out there.
They just got bored.
That, honest to God, I literally think that's what it is with this team. Like there was a game earlier this year. They played the Rams and like Bryce Perkins was
Bryce Perkins, yeah.
I always want to say Hopkins because they also have Bryce Perkins. And the Chiefs were up like 20-10 with, I don't know, like 8 minutes left. And it was just an ugly game. Like they clearly didn't care. They got down near the goal line, and Mahomes had all day and like just for fun decided to throw like a no-look sidearm pass to Kelsey. And it was an awful throw and he got picked off. And like you could tell he was really annoyed, but like the entire rest of the team was just laughing because like it was like, ah, look at that, we'll make fun of him tomorrow. Like they just don't care. And like then they immediately picked off Bryce Perkins on the next play. And they were like, that's the game. Like that's fine. They play with a lot of fire from like my perspective, and I think the perspective of most people who watch them, but from their perspective, I don't think they ever feel like they're playing with fire. They play like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. We'll win. Like it's fine. And then they get into the playoffs, And they, to their credit, have a tendency to just they go nuts. Like it's almost like they've been forced to like wait 5 months, and then they get in these games. I mean, not to bring up a bad memory for you, but it's kind of like that Steelers game where like that, the playoff game where Mahomes throws a pick, then they have a ridiculous fumble that TJ Watt runs in. And then it was like, all right, fine.
We'll play.
Well, I guess we have to play this game, and then just annihilated Pittsburgh for the next like 3 quarters.
And then Tyreek just torments Joe Hayden
Mahomes hits Kelsey before the half, or like whatever, 50-yard touchdown. And it was just like they were just like, okay, fine, whatever, we'll play the game, and then just went and they have a tendency in that year in 2020 that I brought up. They played the Browns in the divisional round. Actually, got the bye. They played Cleveland. They were on their way to steamrolling Cleveland. Then Mahomes got knocked out with a concussion.
Yeah.
And it's like a game where like Henny throws a ridiculous pick, and they're teetering on the edge of oblivion, and they have 4th and 1 at the 50-yard line with a minute to go. Cleveland has no timeout, so if they put the ball there, they're winning the game. They're up 5 points. Andy's like, nope, we're going for it. And everybody to a man in the world's like, there's no way they're going to go for this. They do. They throw the ball to Tyreek Hill first down. Then the next week they play Buffalo. They get down 9-0 immediately. They muff the punt.
Yeah, the muff punt that led to the
9-0. And everybody in Kansas is like, oh God. Then she's like, all right, fine, and score 38 straight points. Just immediately, like, that's it, game's over. Like, so I kind of expect that from them. I think this.
Well, even the Texans game where they got down 24 and they're like, fine.
And then scored 51 points. Like they just the AFC title game. They're down 10. They were down 10-0 and 17-7, then ripped off 28 straight points. Like I fully expect them to struggle against the Raiders on Saturday. That game is absolutely going to come down to the fourth quarter. Jarrett Stidham will look like God. Jacobs will run for $120. Like they will do everything imaginable to keep that game close. And then if they end up the 1 seed, if they get like Jacksonville in the divisional round, everybody's going to be like, I'll tell you what, Trevor Lawrence is going to come in there. And then Chiefs will just absolutely pace them by 30 points. Or if they get one of these 3 teams in the wild card round, we're all going to be, could be an upset, could be an upset. And then it'll just be like Mahomes will throw for 405 touchdowns. You'll see 20 plays that they've been practicing since July that they haven't run yet. Like they don't. That's the one thing that is truly crazy about them. They will, like, you always hear fans say this, but it actually is true with them. People are like, they're saving stuff for the playoffs. Like, they actually do that. They're so confident in themselves during the season. They're like, we don't even have to use a quarter of the playbook. It's fine. And then they get in the playoffs and they'll run some bullshit. You're like, what the hell's that? Like, where the hell's that been all season long? And it's like, and then like after the game, you end up, had those doesn't play safe for this game.
We drew those up in May.
And like, meanwhile, like they lost to the Colts and struggled to beat Houston. But like wouldn't use one of those plays in one of those games, But in any event, yeah. So we're way off topic, but yes, okay. Expect the unexpected when it comes to the Chiefs, good and bad in the postseason.
Sort of sticking with the Chiefs because we'll talk about the MVP race, considering what happened with the Eagles the last couple of weeks with Gardner Minshew at the helm. Everybody and their mothers coming out and saying, "See, this is why Jalen's MVP. You put Gardner Minshew in there, and look what happens." I understand that Jalen Hurts has had a fantastic year. I know that you're probably still on the boat that Patrick Mahomes is the MVP, rightfully so. I think that we're kind of in that same boat. But in terms of the Eagles, they're playing for the division this weekend against Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. And
they're against the Giants.
No, they're against the Giants, and then it's Commanders, Cowboys then. Okay, yeah, I got those mixed up. Regardless, though, I mean, it's a game that they got to win. Giants aren't going to be playing anybody. They have nothing. We touched on this last night in the space. They have 0 to play for. It's going to be you and I playing for the Giants this coming week. Regardless, though, if Jalen Hurts is back, that is big for them. But if not, I mean, if you're Dallas, you win this game and the Eagles lose, the NFC's got a lot more interesting. So did the NFC playoff picture.
So here's what's going to happen, though. The Giants are locked into the 6. They don't give a shit about this game.
No.
They're going to rest everybody. The Eagles are winning by 100 points. They'll be the 1 seed. The NFC to me is pretty straightforward. The Eagles are going to be the 1. The Niners are going to do things that should be behind a paywall to the Cardinals. Okay, that'll be 2. The Vikings. It's unbelievable. I don't know if you're aware of this. I tweeted this out last night. The Vikings are a 12-win team. The Bears are a 3-win team.
They're only a 1-point favorite over Chicago.
1-point favorite in a game like they're actually going to try to win. It's impossible. It's
by the way, the Bears, who are a 3-win team, which is also just absurd.
There's a 9-win disparity between these two teams. Fields was 7 of 21 against the Lions.
With as ugly a pick as you'll see thrown to Aiden Hutchinson.
By the way, listen, we got to have at some point here, we got to have an honest conversation about Justin Fields.
Like, okay.
Not like one of these media-driven, like, let's be the first one to anoint him as king of the world. Like, he is an incredible athletic talent. And I think, I truly believe he's going to be an excellent quarterback in the NFL. I loved him coming out of Ohio State. I still love his talent. Like, they're a dumpster fire around that kid right now. Like,
absolutely.
But
they traded a second-round pick for Chase Claypool, Matt. It's going to end up being the third overall pick in the draft.
Chase was nice enough to come and stack the box, but he is not worth a second-round pick. Okay, I think Chase Claypool will tell you that. But these people who just every time there's like a highlight of him running Justin Fields, oh my God! Like, just stop. Like, look, that's great, and it's an amazing asset to have that he can run like that. He's got to win more consistently from the pocket. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact the Bears stink, okay, and they can't protect him and they don't receive. Like, I'm not placing that at his feet. But what I am saying is, before we turn him into God, can we can he not go 7 of 21 against the Lions, please? I mean, that is one thing about sports media that I'm so offended by my brethren. Like, this idea that we have to just anoint everybody, and we live in this highlight culture where if a guy has a great highlight or two, that's somehow the narrative of the player. And that's ridiculous. Like, if you talk to actual personnel people in the league, they will tell you, like, take away the guy's best 3 plays. Who is he after that? Is he still a really good quarterback, or did he just have 3 really good plays? That's why you and I disagree to the hilt on Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is the standard bearer for the guy who has 3 throws in a game where you're like, oh my God, look at the way he fit that ball in. And then you'll get the rest of his game that didn't make it to Twitter. And you're like,
yesterday was a perfect example of that.
You watch these games and you're like, 3 brutal picks. Like, but you'll only see the throw where you're like, man, he hit McLaurin for a 75-yard touchdown. Look at that seed. And it's like, yeah, that's great. See the rest of the game? When he missed 12 guys were wide open and he took 7 sacks he shouldn't have taken. And he threw 3 picks. Like, and I'm not, he's just one example of many. But, like, there are, like Kyler Murray's another guy like that. Kyler Murray is the poster child for 2 unbelievable throws, 1 incredible scramble, and 27 plays you want back. Like, but nobody ever talks about that, because the throw on 3rd and 7 that went 10 feet over DeAndre Hopkins' head, that doesn't make Twitter. That doesn't make SportsCenter. But the play where he hit, Hollywood Brown on a post, that's the play that everybody's like, sign them up. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, except for all the other shit, which is why they stink. But in any event, no, I think Phil's going to be very good. But I do think we have to kind of, honestly, just to be fair to the kid, like, calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because then what happens is, if he has a year next year, which is good but not great, people are going to be like, oh, what the hell happened? It's like, well, nothing happened. Your expectations were insane.
Especially what he's got around him right now. Like, the offensive line's really bad. Terrible. He's throwing to Velus Jones, Chase Claypool, Byron Pringle.
Dude, come on. Like, relax. Give the kid a chance with honest expectations. The NFC playoff picture, though, Eagles are going to be 1. Niners will be the 2. Vikings will be the 3. Bucks are the 4. Dallas is going to be the 5. The Giants are the 6. And I think the Packers are probably going to be the 7.
Which, by the way, speaking of teams that were improbable looking, 4-8, Packers rattling off possibly 5 wins, getting all the help that they needed along the way. That's remarkable.
It's incredible. I led my column with it. I led my column with that whole scenario, because the Packers, to me, it's insane. Their last 4 games are +9 in the turnover ratio. You want to know why they're winning? That's why they're winning.
Yeah.
That, and they run the ball really well. So,
and Keyshawn Nixon has also been a godsend for that team.
Yeah, I wrote about him too. Yep. Yeah, he's been amazing. They traded out Amari Rodgers, who couldn't stop fumbling the ball, for Nixon, who's been great. No, listen, I think they're going to make the playoffs. Now, here's the thing. Talk about honest conversations.
Okay.
If they are the 7th seed, which if they get in the playoffs, they will be.
Probably facing the 49ers, who have had their number.
Yeah. And you're going to hear all week long, Purdy and Rodgers, Purdy and Rodgers, Purdy and Rodgers. And when nobody's going to talk about it, it's the entire rest of the team, the entire rest of the team, the entire rest of the team. Like, the Packers are not beating that team. I'm sorry. The only way they win that game is if it's one of these like weird, like turnovers galore or something. The Niners, if you lined up the 20 best players in that game, how many of them are on San Francisco? 16 of them? Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, if you're looking for an upset, and the 5 beating the 4 is not an upset because everybody thinks Dallas is a much better team than Tampa.
Sure.
If you're looking for an upset, and I don't even know if this qualifies, it's the Giants over
the Giants and the Vikings. Yeah, absolutely.
The Vikings
if not for a 61-yard field goal, the Giants might win that game a few weeks ago.
The Giants are the Vikings are a colossal fraud. To a point that I can't even believe. Like, remember last year when people were like, the Titans are frauds, like the Titans are frauds as a 1 seed. The Titans are the 85 Bears compared to the Vikings. Bro, I watched the Vikings. I don't understand it. I don't understand how that team ever wins a game. The only thing I will give them, and it's got to be said, in the fourth quarter of close games, they're unbelievable.
Somehow they just click at that time all the time.
I wrote it in my column 2 weeks ago. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Their point differential in one-score games in the fourth quarter is like plus 75. The rest of the time, it's literally negative like 90. It's ridiculous.
Our mutual buddy Mike Tenier tweeted out something that said, even if the Vikings win by 49 against the Bears, they would still only have like a plus 1 point differential in the year or something crazy like that. Like, that is absurd.
It's unbelievable.
Jamie Irvin pointed this out this morning on GMFB. Let me pull up the entirety of their schedule real quick because I don't want to get this wrong. So, in terms of the games that they've lost, it's an absurd point differential. You look, the loss to the Eagles 24-7. If you look at what was the next game that they lost to the Lions 34-23, and then the loss to the Packers 41-17. They've only scored 50 points in their 3 losses, and the other team scored, I think it was a combined like 139 or something. So when they lose badly. And when they win, it seems that it's always got to be, I mean, they're 12-0 in close games, which is unheard of.
They're 11-0 in 1-score games.
That's absurd.
They've literally won one game that wasn't a 1-score game, and it was week 1. Like, it's unbelievable. It's impossible, honestly.
In terms of who is the biggest threat to the Eagles, because this is, for a team that good, and we've talked about the NFC all year being like, okay, is anybody going to break away in this conference outside of Philly? Philly's really good. The 49ers started to do that, then Garoppolo got hurt. Brock Purdy's a great story. I don't see him going into Lincoln and beating the Eagles. Like, this feels like the Eagles conference to lose right now. Unless Dallas gets really hot. That's the only team outside of maybe San Francisco. I think that Dallas, just because Dak's there, and it's not Brock Purdy. The defense has been solid all year, and the weapons that they have. That's the only team I can really see upsetting Philadelphia.
So, I mean, the Niners certainly can. I think Dallas could do it. Dallas could beat them. I think those two teams could do it. I don't think anybody else is knowing it.
No.
I don't think. The one thing about Dallas, and I'm going to write about this actually this week, or actually I already wrote about it. It's going up on Wednesday. The one thing about the Cowboys is Dak is going to be the ultimate wild card to me. Like, he
you never know what you're going to get from Dak Prescott.
He has games, man, where he's just a guy. Throw a pick or two and throw for a couple 100 yards. Like, he's good. He's fine. Like, I'm not saying he's, Davis Mills, but like, he's just fine. Then he has other games where he can come with it. Like, he can play with anybody. That's probably like Dak is probably the biggest wild card for me in the NFC playoffs. Because if he plays well, they can beat anybody in the like. One thing about the Cowboys, they can get after the quarterback. They can make your life very difficult. They have 2 good corners in Bland and Diggs. I know, like, Diggs is somewhat overrated because of all the picks, but he's a better player than people think he is.
Sure.
His detractors. They're a really good team. And the one thing that does scare the hell out of me right now, Philadelphia, is all these injuries. Sweat had a scary injury yesterday. Yeah. He's tweeted out he's going to be back this season. I hope he is. Lane Johnson, I know he's talking about playing through a core muscle. So, dude, I have no idea what that's going to look like. That could be like he tries to play and he just can't do it. Like, yeah. I don't know. Or he plays and he's half of who he normally is. Jalen Hurts, I don't know. Like, what is it going to look like? I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he had a lacerated kidney. Like, I don't know. Like, he's come back from it. Like, I don't know. That is a lot. That is a lot of talent. And the one thing I will say with Philadelphia, it does concern me. they have not played many good quarterbacks all year long.
No.
They played Trevor Lawrence in a driving rainstorm early in the year, and they played Dak, and Dak lit him up like a Christmas tree. And Dalton, who's not that good, went 18-22 yesterday.
Taylor Heineke lit him up too in the first game against the Commanders.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing with them where it's like they might even get to the Super Bowl not having to face a good quarterback. But if they get there and they get Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Herbert, like then what? What does that look like? I mean, does that look like, hey, they can handle them and they just haven't been tested that much? Or does that look like, oh, my God, Mahomes just threw a 6 touchdown pass? Like, I don't know. I mean, I will say this. Philadelphia, their sack numbers are unbelievable this year.
Yeah. Oh, they are. I mean, they've added every defensive lineman and edge rusher under the sun this season. They brought in Linval Joseph and Sue. Not to mention, like, the guys that they already had at their disposal were really good. Like, I credit Howie Roseman a lot for seeing guys that are available and saying, yeah, they can help us. Let's get them. Go get them right now. They got Robert Quinn at the deadline. Like they've been as aggressive as any team throughout the last calendar year, and I give them a ton of credit for that. One of the other things that scares me is that this is a coach and quarterback combination that haven't won a playoff game. So this is uncharted territory.
I mean, you don't know what you're going to have. I mean, it's just and look, this is a dream season for them. I wrote a piece on them in the summer about their offseason. I thought they had the best offseason in football, so I wrote a piece talking to a bunch of sources in the league and around the Eagles. And I mean, there was a belief certainly with them that they were going to be a playoff team. They were going to be good. But I mean, I'll tell you flat out. I mean, I firmly thought that they were going to be this good. I mean, I think there was an internal belief like, look, this team's better. This team's good. But like they were very aware that last year they snuck in the playoffs beating nobody. Like they knew that.
Beating Ian Book on Monday Night Football.
They knew they beat nobody. I mean, they knew that. They would like literally. They knew that. They were very open about it. So like talking to people around that team. So, for them, like all these upgrades, it was like, all right, we're going to fortify ourselves as a playoff team. I don't think this was expected. I mean, I think they certainly believe in Hurts, and they thought he was going to be the guy. But I don't think anybody in that building was like, oh yeah, we're gonna flirt with being undefeated and be the clear number 1 seed in the NFC. I don't think that was the expectation. But obviously now, I mean, expectations change, and they are where they are. I think they will be the 1 seed. And look, they're going to have to win 2 games to go to the Super Bowl. There's a real chance too. Like if the Giants do beat the Vikings, with the other games, or the Cowboys winning and the Niners winning, like they don't have to play the Cowboys or the Niners because they get the Giants. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. I commend them on a great season to this point.
I do as well. And I think that when teams have seasons like this, we always try to poke holes in them. That's not what I'm trying to necessarily do with the Eagles. Rather, it's just there are concerns, and it'll be fun to watch in the playoffs. We got Bills Bengals tonight. Huge, maybe the game of the year thus far in terms of the ramifications that come with it. These are 2 quarterbacks who have become the darlings of the NFL in terms of how likable they are and how much their respective franchises have just revolved around them and what they've done for their teams. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, this is the first matchup of these 2, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
So that'll be fun to watch going down in Cincinnati.
Yep.
What do you expect from this? We talked to Perino a couple of days ago, getting his perspective from a Bills side of things. This is gonna be fun to watch.
I gotta tell you, I think all things considered, like the timing of the game and the importance of the game and the 2 teams being involved in it, I think it's the best game of the season. I know you could sit there and say, Chiefs Bills or whatever, one of the NFC games. But like to me, Week 17, Monday Night Football. I mean, this is a great game.
And thank God for Joe Buck and Troy Aikman getting this game, because they were one Colts-Chargers game away from like sacrificing a virgin to get a good game.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, yeah, those poor guys. My God, I mean, between them and Al Michaels, there should be court-ordered therapy.
Yeah.
I appreciate that Al has just completely given up even pretending to care.
Al couldn't give a single shit anymore. Like he had back-to-back weeks of Broncos, Colts, and Commanders, Bears. After that, he said, "I'm done."
They showed him the other day in the booth during that Thursday night game that meant nothing between the Titans and the Cowboys. And like normally, he wasn't dressed in like a windbreaker, but he was clearly just like casual. I don't care. Like it was great. I love Al Michaels.
The best to ever do it.
So Look, I think this game. So I wrote about this game in Sack in the Box. I think this game is going to come down to a handful of things. I'm actually going to pull up what I wrote because
Okay.
there's no way in hell I'm remembering it off the top of my head. I wrote like 3,000 words. So
The Bills are favored in this game for anybody wondering.
Which I'm going to be. They should not be favored in this game. I'm sorry, they shouldn't.
I can agree with that.
So I wrote the winner of this game will come down to the following. Point A. Is the bigger loss Von Miller or Lyle Collins? Point B, can Cincinnati bait Josh Allen into another red zone pick? And point C, can the Buffalo corners not named Tre'Davious White and Teron Johnson hold up? Whoever wins 2 of those 3 questions walks away smiling. That's it. I mean, for me, here's the concern I have in this game that I will tell who I guess I'm going to pick. Tre'Davious White, since he's come back from injury, has not been Tre'Davious White. He's been okay. He's not been awful, but he's not been him.
Not been the elite top 5
right.
guy.
He's not been an all-pro level player. He's been fine, but he's not been where you're like, okay, he's shutting that guy down.
Sure.
Which is fine. He's coming off a torn ACL. Like, I get that. I'm not criticizing him, but like he's not fully back yet.
Yeah.
Dane Jackson has not played particularly well.
Guy who they had high hopes for coming into the season too.
Yeah, Kyer Elam has not played particularly well as first round
draft pick.
Okay, athletic for all hell, but he's not been great. If the Bills corners are not good in this game, they're losing. Like the Bengals will just throw and throw and I mean, it's just. I know the Bengals offensive line is not great, but Burrow gets rid of the ball very quickly, and I thought Von Miller made the Bills a Super Bowl favorite. It was my favorite. I had 2 signings that I wrote about in the offseason that were my 2 favorite signings. Von Miller, 1, Hassan Reddick, 2. Reddick's been tremendous. I think he's the best value in entire free agency last year. Yeah. Miller, everybody freaked out about the size of the contract. That's all fluff anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. Losing Von Miller is devastating to them. It's like if the Chiefs lost Chris Jones. It's like if the Bengals lost Jamar Chase. Like, it changes who you are fundamentally. They've had to blitz more without Von Miller, and they're still not getting home as much. So now you're taking guys out of coverage, but you're still not getting to the quarterback. That is a major problem against teams like Cincinnati and the Chargers and the Chiefs, where if you don't have the ability to cover and you're still not getting home, good night.
Yep.
They brought in Von Miller because 13 seconds happened last year. Like, that's why he's there. And I think his absence is going to show up significantly in Monday night. Look, Gregory Rousseau is a good young player. He is not Von Miller.
No.
And the Bills and these, they've won a lot of games recently. They're on a nice little streak. I give them credit for that. If you look at who they've beaten here over the 6-game win streak, they beat the Browns with Jacoby Brissett. They beat the Lions, Jared Goff, fair enough. It's a quality, somewhat quality win. I mean, the Lions aren't great, but decent enough. Mac Jones, Mike White / Joe Flacco. Tua, they gave up 29 points to Tua. Justin Fields. Like, none of those teams.
And compare that to the teams that the Bengals have beaten, where they beat Kansas City in a tough game. Right. They had at least one more like really quality. They came back and beat Tampa Bay when they were down by like 17.
So the Bengals have won 7 in a row.
Very
right, Carolina, Pittsburgh, fine. The Titans, they won the game where they were beat up. Mind you, all these games, by the way, didn't have Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Then they beat the Chiefs. They beat the Browns with Watson. They beat the Bucs on the road. They beat the Pats. Now, listen, you want to sit there and parse it a million ways to Sunday, that's fine. Like, we can sit there and do that. My point is, though, it's about this matchup. I think the Bengals' creativeness in their scheme defensively will do enough to slow down Buffalo. Buffalo doesn't have a ton of creativity in their scheme. They're very much what they are. They play zone. They don't try to blitz a lot. Although, like I said, that's increased. My concern for Buffalo in this game is Burrow is just going to pick them apart because their secondary is not that good. They lost Hyde. White's not the same guy right now. They don't have another corner that they can truly depend on the outside. And on plays that are longer developing, like, I just don't see, like, who's the guy who's going to torch you with the pass rush? Who's that guy? I don't know who that guy is for Buffalo. Miller was that guy. Miller was the guy that, like, in a game like this, he's the reason they beat the Chiefs earlier this year. He's the reason. I think not having him tonight's the difference. I think the Bengals will win. I don't think it's a blowout by any stretch. I think it's a one-score game. I think it's even probably like a field goal game, but I think it's like 30-27, Cincinnati.
Buffalo's going to be largely relying on Jordan Poyer and Matt Milano, and
Yes.
I think that's going to be. I mean, both of those guys, by the way, all pro level players. But if you can't get home eventually, especially with the talent that the Bengals have outside with Higgins, Chase, Boyd, Hayden Hurst underneath the tight end as well, like they've got guys all over the field that I don't know, man. It's going to be fun. It feels like the Bengals are due for a bad game eventually, that they don't win. I hope we get a well played game on both sides of the ball tonight. It's not going to be a lopsided victory or anything like that. So looking forward to it. Before we get out of here, anything that you want to make sure that people know about going into this week?
Same old, man. Stack in the Box podcast at noon Eastern, 11 Central on Tuesday over at YouTube. It isn't live. You can check it out. You can ask questions in the comments. You can subscribe anywhere you find your podcast. And then, Stack in the Box column is up right now on fansided.com. I also tweet it out. You can check that out. It covers the whole league. Tomorrow, power rankings. Wednesday, quarterback rankings. Thursday, picks. A few other pieces mixed in as well. Last week, I wrote an insider feature about Lamar Jackson's future and talked to a lot of people in the league, and they had a lot of interesting things to say. So you can check that out. You can find that on my feed, or you can just Google it, I'm sure. That pretty much covers it.
And for me, Steelers grades on Sports Illustrated. Justin Fields piece coming later this week for Bears Wire and USA Today. Matt, always appreciate talking to you, buddy. Happy New Year. Go. You said that you had some family coming in. Enjoy that for the next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, everybody. We'll be back later this week, preview the final week of the NFL season, heading into the playoffs. Thanks for tuning in. It's Pump Fake.